Welcome. In part 1 we met Jeremiah, a shy young man who doubts himself when God calls him to be a prophet. Despite his fears and excuses, God touches his mouth, filling him with divine words and purpose. From that moment, Jeremiah is set apart to confront kings, call out sin and plant truth in a broken nation. Let's continue the story of Jeremiah. This was still in the days when kings strutted in palaces while the people stumbled in sin. There was the prophet Jeremiah. He wasn't the flashy type. He didn't wear camel hair couture like Elijah or call down heavenly barbecues of fire. No. Jeremiah's brand was tears. Buckets of them. That's why history remembers him with a heavy nickname, the weeping prophet. But why did he weep? Was he just soft-hearted? Too emotional? Not at all. Jeremiah wept because his eyes were tuned to the heartbreak of heaven. Let's rewind the timeline. We're in the 7th century BC, around 627 BC to be precise. The once mighty kingdom of Israel had already been crushed by the Assyrians a century earlier. Now only Judah remained, a smaller, weaker nation hanging on like the last slice of bread in a hungry house. Kings came and went. Some tried reform like the good King Josiah, who rediscovered the book of the law. But most rulers after him couldn't care less. Corruption ran from the palace down to the market stalls. Priests were corrupt. Judges took bribes. Idolatry was everywhere. Jeremiah saw it all. And it broke him. While the people were busy bowing to Baal, burning incense to the Queen of Heaven, and even sacrificing their children in the valley of Hinnom, yes, human sacrifice right outside Jerusalem, Jeremiah was shouting, warning, crying. And nobody wanted to listen. You'd think God's prophet would be treated like royalty, right? Wrong. Jeremiah was mocked, beaten, thrown in stocks, dumped in a cistern and labeled a traitor. If prophets had Google reviews, his would read, "Too depressing. 1 star. Would not listen again." But Jeremiah couldn't quit. Every time he tried to stay silent, he said it felt like fire shut up in his bones. Jeremiah 20 verse 9. He had to speak even if no one clapped. And that's why he wept. He wept because his people were running headlong into destruction, and he could already see Babylon warming up in the distance. He wept because sin wasn't just breaking God's law, it was breaking God's heart. He wept because truth sounded like judgment, but behind the judgment was a father begging his children to come home. The title Weeping Prophet wasn't just poetic branding, it was reality. In Lamentations, a book also attributed to Jeremiah, he describes Jerusalem after its fall in 586 BC like a widow sitting alone, her streets filled with mourning, her children gone into exile. His tears weren't for himself. They were for a nation that chose idols over intimacy with God. Let's be honest, if Jeremiah lived today, people would call him a prophet of doom. His YouTube channel wouldn't trend. His podcast would have the lowest ratings. Imagine his TikTok, day 47, still crying. Repent. Not exactly influencer material. But heaven wasn't looking for an influencer. Heaven was looking for someone who cared enough to cry with God. Jeremiah's tears teach us something vital. Real ministry flows from compassion. It's not about being loud, popular, or impressive. It's about letting your heart break for the things that break God's heart. The people who annoy you, frustrate you, or even ignore you, they're the same people God longs to save. Jeremiah wept for rebels. He prayed for backsliders. He carried compassion when everyone else carried pride. That's the secret of his nickname. Behind every tear was the heartbeat of God. We live in a world where it's easy to scroll past suffering, easy to laugh at failure, Easy to judge sin but hard to weep over it. Jeremiah shows us another way. A way where compassion replaces condemnation. A way where tears are not weakness but strength. A way where we echo Jesus himself, who centuries later looked at Jerusalem and wept, saying, "How often I longed to gather you, but you were not willing." Matthew 23 verse 37. So next time you see Jeremiah's nickname, the weeping prophet, don't dismiss it as sadness. See it as a mirror. Ask yourself, do I see people the way God sees them? When I look at the brokenness of the world, do I laugh, ignore, or weep? Do I care enough to pray for those far from God, even if they mock me in return? Jeremiah's tears weren't wasted. They became prayers, sermons, and a legacy that still whispers to us today. Having God's compassion for lost people is never weakness. It's prophetic strength.